back again with some more Piers Morgan. This one is a brand new segment from the Chris Williamson podcast. This is the biggest problem with the UK. Now, I don't know what exactly he's going to say here, but the UK has a plethora of problems, let's just say. Crime, housing, goddamn food is too expensive, everything's too expensive there. The country is falling into a deep despair. So we're about to find out what Piers Morgan says about it. Let's get it, guys.
Do you make of the state of the UK at the moment? It really feels like we've got a lot of turbulence going on. 2 million people voted signed a petition for Keir Starmer to leave. Then this insanely surprising U-turn from Keir Starmer about immigration, saying that the Tories ran an open border policy, all of the riots that we saw across the country this summer. How do you come to think about it? It's the country that you've chosen to live in?
I think that America has got its confidence back, and Trump has been responsible for that, as has Elon Musk. I think little thing, the rockets going off, right? They just instill in people a sense of America's firing rockets again. They're taking us to the moon, maybe to Mars. There's something heroically ambitious about the way that people like Musk feel, and Trump being down there at the last launch was just great imagery.
True.
He's making people feel confident again.
Mastery, competence, conquer.
Yes, yeah. In the UK, there's no sense of that. There's a sense at the moment of we're just existing, and that nothing's really working, that public services are decaying fast, that we're getting far too many people coming in, that obviously we need immigrants to work as a country, but you can't have a net migration of nearly 1 million people and expect already struggling public services to not struggle even more. You just can't. And they said they'd fix the boats. The boats have, I think more people are coming in than ever. But it's actual legal migration is a big problem, bigger than the boats issue. And we've gone through years again, going back to what we discussed earlier, where you couldn't talk about this if you even raised an eyelid on Question Time about the number of people coming in.
Racist.
You were racist. In the same way that if you talk about trans athletes in sport, you're transphobic.
But we've just seen
these things, and that all that has to stop.
But we've just seen Keir Starmer give a 2-minute statement, which went ballistic on social media, that the Conservatives couldn't have gotten away with 3-4 years ago. Could not have said that. So two things: has the Overton window shifted?
Yes.
And secondly, is this just a guy that's had 2 million people put a petition together for him going, I need to do something to slow
I don't think it's that so much, but he will certainly have looked at what happened in America and why Trump won. And he'll think, if I don't fix the cost of living, illegal immigration, and stop the woke crap infesting my party, I'm done for. Particularly if you've got someone circling like Nigel Farage, who is the UK version of Trump. And he's a good friend of Trump's, right?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. That is a good point, actually.
And Farage's views were considered extreme. They're now considered increasingly mainstream because he's been proven on immigration to be right. Right? Not about everything. Some of the language he's used has been, in my view, wrongly inflammatory. But his basic principle about if you don't have a border, as Ronald Reagan said, if you don't have a proper border, you don't have a country. That's coming back to be clearly the case. So we need to be able to have an honest debate about this without people being called racist if they raise concerns about what is an obvious problem.
But every country wants to have some borders. Like, what are you?
Well, you're not a country if you don't.
Precisely correct. Elon Musk rumours a threat of $100 million to be tossed at Nigel Farage. You and him had a bit of a run-in earlier on this year. What do you make of that? Would you be happy to see Farage get 100 mil from Elon?
I don't think you can do that legally in our country. Someone was saying there's a legal impediment to him actually doing that.
He's rich, he can get around it.
As a foreign citizen, yeah. Look, he obviously had a big effect on Trump winning. I think there's no question of that.
Because the funding, Nigel Farage could get in because the funding would be massive. Elon Musk just gives people money like it's nothing. It's crazy, man. The amount of money that he has. I think he's the richest man in the world right now. It's crazy.
And look, I think Elon's allowed to do what he likes. He's a free citizen.
But would it help the UK politics to have that position?
Well, it would balance it out because at the moment Labour certainly have a lot more money coming in than the Tories in the last election. So I look, they all take money from people, right? Some take money from very dodgy people indeed. All of us pretend we hate it, but it carries on both sides. If they all want to give up all outside donations, fine.
If the Conservatives,
they can't really afford to do that.
If the Conservatives are as dead in the water as people think in the UK, is reform where the attention.
Form's in a very, very good position. I mean, Kemi Badenoch's got to do something pretty radical and pretty quickly with the Conservative Party, or my prediction would be that Farage may well end up being the next Prime Minister, as Elon Musk has said. I don't think that's a mad idea at all. But he might be by then running a Conservative Party which has had reform flip into it. That's where my smart money would be, is that they'll do a deal, they'll merge the parties, and that probably Farage ends up contesting the next election. Wow. And if Keir Starmer has not delivered by then on all his promises, or any of them, then he could be political toast.
I've had Dominic Cummings on the show, and he did a podcast recently where he talked about some theatrics, I think you could say, in government, that there was sort of a fake meritocracy, fake responsibility, fake government. He also said that cabinet meetings are fully scripted. Based on what he says, based on what Rory Stewart says, I don't know. It really does not feel like we have the brightest buttons in the bunch.
Well, we don't. We have a very mediocre tier of politicians now. I mean, you go back to the Thatcher years and her cabinets, just packed full of very smart people. Tony Blair's cabinet, for the first 2 terms in particular, incredibly smart people. People like Gordon Brown as Chancellor, just unbelievably brilliant brains. So I think that's...
Is there like a bit of a brain drain from England? Something like that? All the best people are leaving, whatever, to get more money? I'm not sure.
Certainly true. I think a lot of smart people, particularly if they've made good money, don't want to get into politics because it's just going to ruin their lives.
True. Politics is not a great area to be in, guys. Really not.
Worst paying, most negative, boring,
In Singapore, famously, they pay their politicians $1 million a year.
Do you know what the head of UK cybercrime wage was? It was offered a couple of years ago, £65,000 a year.
So why would you expect anyone of calibre to do that? So we don't pay people enough for important jobs in this country. Yeah. I would personally pay the politicians an awful lot more. What they couldn't do is have any outside interests. So I might even pay them £500,000 a year, but I'd say you cannot have any stock investments, you cannot have any outside business.
Rishi Sunak would be fucked.
Well, he would, yeah. But in a way, I didn't like the fact that Rishi was stinking rich. I was fine about that. I think you don't make decisions then based on what's going to benefit you.
That's a good point. When you have tons of money, guys, you kind of do, what's based on the people more. Like if you're always worried about where your source of income is coming, you should be focusing about the people. You serve the people as a politician. So it's kind of a good point, actually. You want the politicians to be quite rich.
Right.
Yeah,
so
in some ways it insulates you from...
I wonder if a lot of Tories have not got seller's remorse about Rishi, actually.
True.
I think the way he behaved after he lost, he was very impressive in the comments after that. I always liked him. I think he made a few strategic missteps, but actually pretty smart, committed, hard-working guy. And yeah, the fact he was rich didn't bother me at all. But no, I think it's going to be very interesting. I mean, I do think we're deliberately attracting mediocre people to politics now because we don't make it attractive enough.
Well, we're second
to attract the smart people.
The UK is second in the world in millionaire exits in 2024. First in the world is China with about, I think, 13 to 15,000, and the UK is about 10,000.
Wow, that's crazy. So the people leaving the country that are millionaires that have all this money, they're not staying around in London. They're just like leaving the country to find a better place to live. It makes sense. If you went anywhere else in Europe, Italy, Spain, and you have loads of money, you're going to have a much better life than if you live in the UK. The UK is great to make money, but if you already have the money, it's probably not great to stay there.
But we are 3% of the population. We have more than India, and India is 20 times bigger. We have the same number of universities in the top 10 in the world as America do. But we have 1/5 the number of startup founder entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
Why?
you see, the UK isn't like the US, guys. And the thing about the US is so great. They're like, have the rockets, they have assets on the moon, they have some police, everything, the government, everything just works like a really well-oiled machine, the military. Whereas in the UK and Ireland and Europe, it seems like we're just so slow to do everything. It seems like we're so far behind like the US, it's ridiculous. Whereas before in the 80s, we were pretty much on par.
As America do. But we have 1/5 the number of startup founder entrepreneurs.
Yeah, there's no entrepreneurs. It's crazy.
Why? Well, because there is not, even bottom up. We can talk top down, what's happening in Whitehall, the hallowed corridors of Westminster and stuff. But I think even bottom up, I'm from a Stockton, working class town, and I saw some videos of Middlesbrough riots going through Acklam, in like places that I know, in places that I've been, and like just working class rage, people disgruntled. And this, sick.
Well, hang on. Okay, let's talk about these riots for a minute.
Here we go.
Because that wasn't why they were rioting.
Of course, that's my point. My point is
they were rioting because they were whipped up by people who should know better and probably did know better into believing a certain set of circumstances had happened surrounding an appalling attack, right? They hadn't. It wasn't actually an illegal asylum seeker who committed these actions. And so people were in a way, on a smaller, it was a smaller version of the Iraq War, which I opposed so vociferously. I'll tell you why. It was fought on an entirely false pretext. Had Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, that war would have been justified. Had the person who perpetrated this crime been an illegal asylum seeker, you're not entitled to commit violence, but you're certainly entitled to feel rage about that happening at a time when this whole issue of illegal asylum seekers, coming in and taking over the country, all that argument they put forward, it would at least have had some validity that was why they were angry.
Even the premise wasn't accurate.
But everything about it was wrong. Right, so the riots were whipped up by people, malevolent voices who should have known better.
I don't know how people listen to malevolent voices on the internet. If someone on the internet tells me, Chris, go jump off a cliff, I'm not going to jump off a cliff. I don't listen to anyone but myself, guys, and maybe my family. Like, people listen to the people on the internet, like, that's insane stuff. Like, I don't think you should deserve to go to jail if you say crazy shit on the internet, but you should have more common sense to believe crazy people on the internet. Like, this is wild.
Tommy Robinson, Andrew Tate and others. I took on Tate about this a few days later. And that's a problem with social media. Now, let's go further to when a lot of people were put in prison because they tweeted things.
Yeah.
That I don't agree with.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, like, at least Piers is admitting that. Like, guys, I don't agree. If you tweet something crazy, you shouldn't go to jail. I mean, if people listen to you, that's their fault, man. Like, if someone says, hey, Chris, do this, and I flip and die, that's my fault. That's not, you know what I mean? You have to judge the scenarios based on your own decision, guys. And going to jail for saying things on the internet, that's so lame, bro.
Right. Yeah. And I don't agree with that because it seems a ridiculous overreach. And when you overreach to that level, where people are literally, grandmothers are being put in prison for 2 years for something they put on Facebook, that's not a sensible response to this either. If people are actually chucking Molotov cocktails at an asylum seeker hotel, chuck him in prison for a few years. But a granny gobbing off on Facebook, come on, is that what we're really about in this country?
There was the thing I realized when I watched those videos in Middlesbrough was a lot of the people that were walking down the street, there was a new build house with fresh windows, and you could tell because it still had that sort of tape papering over the outside. And people were out in the streets going through a classic northern terraced working class neighborhood, and someone just picked up a brick and threw it through the window of this brand new house. And that was the point where I was like, this has got nothing to do with the immigration, rightly or wrongly, false pretext or correct pretext. Right. It's just this sort of...
Well, that would be an angry resentment.
To what?
Well, people having what you don't have, and your fear. And look,
like, when society is really rich and stuff, everybody has money. Nobody's unhappy. It's just when the poor people have nothing, and then the rich people, they see rich people, say, "Oh, let's attack rich people." That's not really the good way to go about it, guys. That's not.
Knows what's going on with these people.
I understand, but
I understand the rage of people who maybe through the pandemic have come out and they've got no job. Maybe they've gone through a horrible divorce. Maybe they've got no money. They can't afford to feed their kids. Their lives are shit. And I understand they're going to feel angry. Of course I do. And by the way, there are lots of people in this country who are in that position. Lots. And you've got to understand what is driving
I do.
Sense of anger and resentment.
I lived, half of my life was spent in that world. 50%. I'm 36. Wow. I've been there. I was there until I was 18, and then I left to go to university in Newcastle. So I know these people. I know that culture very well. Yeah. It's electric. It's like the air before a thunderstorm begins. And it's this sort of ambient malevolence below the surface, this disgruntledness. But it feels to me like the UK has a very, very sort of potent version of this. Great video that I saw, this American that lived in London for 6 months, and he describes the way that British football fans behave. He's like, they're not just passionate, they're angry. Like they would happily, if there weren't police officers between them and the other team.
Hang on again.
I know, I knew this was going to happen.
They're like a fight, mate. Let's not overthink football hooligans, right? I've seen them in action. Most of them just like a good old punch up. They're like a drink, probably some drugs, and a fight. And they actually love it. And to understand the mind of a football hooligan, you need to start from that. It's not some great...
I mean, even the normal fans, you don't need to be one of the hooligans. Even the guys in the back row, they seem to...
Yeah, the mob mentality can brew up very quickly. Of course, I've been at football matches.
So you think they're downstream from the more aggressive parts of the stadium, so to speak?
Yes, I think a lot of football hooligans... I mean, look, when I was young, football hooligans dominated every single match. It was pretty scary and thrilling at the same time. Can't pretend otherwise. When I was 18, 19, watching battles on the terraces was exciting in a way that watching a UFC fight can be exciting. But I'd rather have the more controlled environment.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't battling on terraces illegal?
Than having it happening on a football
where it can
terrace.
spill over into your seat.
And now it doesn't. But I wouldn't over-intellectualise the average British football hooligan, who they may like to see themselves as political polemists with their fists, but they're not. Yeah. Most of them just like a good fight.
Trust really is everything.
It's kind of funny. Yeah, I love it, guys. Let me know your thoughts. Why the UK, and the biggest problem with the UK is the attitude, it seems like, anyways. Let's see some of the comments. Chris, thank you for giving your platform to black lesbians. It's about time. People like Piers and his ick are a big part of the problem. Piers is simply outspoken person from Murdoch and FOS. The bell end is part of the problem. This bell end is part of the problem. This is the biggest problem in the UK. Piers Morgan. That's pretty funny. Yeah, so Piers Morgan is a big problem with the UK. The UK hate Piers Morgan. I don't mind him, okay? I don't think anything that he says is pretty much correct, but hey, man, keep putting up videos on the internet for me to react to. It's kind of funny. I love you guys all. If you guys want to support me, link is in the description for my Patreon. You guys can support me right down there, and hopefully we get some more blocked videos up on that channel soon. I'll see you guys in the next one, man. Peace.